You're listening to In Sickness, a podcast about caregiving with Allison Breininger and Justin Bima. Good morning, Allison.
Hey, Justin. Last time we were together, you told us all about like all the things that were going on with Sarah.
Mm-hmm.
And so before we start today, can you catch us up? Like what's been going on? How is Sarah? What's the latest?
Yeah, so she's recovering better than we kind of all expected. She's bouncing back a little quicker. She's certainly not where she was before she went into the hospital, just as far as energy and all of that. Like she's still more fatigued, has less energy, and is just kind of, in bed more than she was.
Okay.
And so, it's a slow kind of recovery process that we're going through. As far as the actual stuff that happened, we're kind of waiting on a referral at the moment and haven't really dug into that yet. But she hasn't had any additional symptoms from that. So,
okay.
Yeah, we're just kind of in the slow kind of waiting through the recovery process. Okay. And it's all of us have been kind of caught off guard with how it's not been as like extreme of a crash as we, I think, all anticipated as it was happening.
Good.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's impossible to know, but do you attribute that to the new med that she started a while back that's made such a big difference? Or, I mean, I suppose it's hard to know, right?
I think it is hard to know. I think if that's the only like obvious thing to point to, other than a combination of that and the fact that has allowed her to, in general, do a little bit more. And so if that's just kind of helped build up her stamina a little bit.
She has a little more endurance just in general.
Right.
Yeah.
So it could be some combination of that. So
I think it just strikes me to think about like, when people talk about COVID or other things and like, well, it's just this, I'll just bounce back from it. The people like Sarah and like Sean and like so many others, like the hits, even if it's just like a hit that you or I would take, is so different than what would happen to their body. Like I have a friend whose kids have a chronic illness and one got a cold and the cold turned into a thing where she was in the hospital for like 13 days. And, and in the end, that's the only thing they could point it to was like the common cold. Right. And so I think it's just a good reminder to people who don't live with serious chronic illness that like those little bugs that you're like, it's fine. It's just a cold or a flu or a stomach bug or whatever.
Exactly.
Like we'll bounce back. That's not always the case for people who have underlying things. So, but I'm really, really glad that she's bouncing back more quickly than you expected. How about you? Because I think we talked a lot in that episode about the toll all of that took on you. So how's your bounce back going?
I wouldn't say that. I mean, as we talked about before, I was pretty exhausted and burned out like before she went into the hospital.
Yeah.
So like, I'm still very much that. I'm still pretty tired. And how much of that is additional recovery needed from that experience and how much of that is just that experience didn't help any recovery that was going on. I'm still pretty worn out and exhausted and just trying to take it easy as best I can. So
it's kind of the same thing that I just said, right? About that, like, just like as the person with the chronic illness, it hits them harder. The caregiver, it hits them harder. Right. So I want to say typical, whatever that means, right? A typical spouse whose spouse had to go to the ER, had to do all the things like, they didn't go into it as depleted as you likely did. So they would bounce back faster too.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. I was thinking about you because, it's December now and it's just real dark.
It is, although it's snowing here today, which is not, unlike you, this is not a common thing. Super common for us in the winter. So it's kind of amazing outside right now.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So if I see you staring off out the window, that's why.
That's what's happening.
But I've been thinking of you because I pulled out I don't know if sad lamp is the right term for it, but like those
I know
lamps.
what you mean.
Yeah. Because I remember you said that you have one of those. And I was wondering, you said for those in your office. So have you gone back to your office to get it? Have you been using your sad lamp?
I didn't want to go through the whole, like, I'd go back to the office to get it. And so I just ordered another one.
Nice.
And so, I've been using that in the morning and
nice.
It's, I let myself believe that it helps. I don't.
Yeah.
And it's very dark in the morning. And so anything I can do to help get through these dark months is
agreed.
Welcome.
And it feels, so I've been using it too, and it feels kind of, I mean, it's not the same as like putting your face into the sunshine, but it's got, there is something to it that like,
right.
And like we said, it doesn't hurt. So why not?
Yep.
Yeah.
You need take everything I can get.
It's true. Well, we just got 2 weeks left, right? Until it starts getting a little brighter.
Yeah, that's true. That's right.
Yeah. We'll get through, I suppose.
Yeah. How about you? How are you doing these days?
Well, I'm older than last time you saw me.
Yeah, that's right. Happy belated birthday.
Thank you. Yeah. So just had a birthday. Got to celebrate a little more than last year, which was kind of fun, which I don't even remember what happened last year. Nothing.
Yeah, right.
So it's kind of nice to get to see a couple people. Something that happened that unfortunately happens to us too often is that a friend of ours who has Fanconi anemia passed away.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And it is a person who I had gotten to know his wife really well. And he, is very much like I can see their story in us. And I think she could see our story in them. And he was having his bone marrow transplant. And I think she sort of saw me as like future her, right?
Right.
Because Sean's coming up on his 10-year anniversary of his bone marrow transplant, which was obviously successful.
Right.
And she didn't have any reason to think. I mean, it's like super risky procedure, but didn't have any reason to think that it would not be successful for him. And, just a lot of really unfortunate things happened during the process. And he ended up passing away during his transplant process. And, we have lost over the years. So I can't even count. I don't even want to begin to count so many friends with FA, with Fanconi anemia, because of the way the disease works, right? That's the way it happens. And also because of that, and because of like my caregiver advocacy and all of that. And over the years, I have befriended a lot, like you, right? Like we are friends because of chronic illness.
Yes. Yeah.
And so I have a lot of friends in like a lot of online community and whatnot that are living with really hard medical things, which often can mean then that we lose them.
Yeah.
Right. And that the disease takes them. And there's also benefits. So anyway, I was thinking, this is something I've just been thinking a lot about, because certainly I am so glad that people like you or this person who just passed away were in my life.
Yeah.
And it's really hard. I mean, I, as a just turned 42-year-old, like know way more people than a typical 42-year-old would have known who have passed away at my age. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And these are not like 97-year-old grandma people. Yeah. These are like young people. So I was wondering if we could talk about that today, about like the risks and benefits or pros and cons of like having a community that gets it, but then also sort of like the tragedy that comes with that as well. And so I know that with the things that Sarah, lives with, those are not as like risky as in life threatening.
Right.
In the same way. But I wonder, like, what does that look like for you? Like, do you have people have you surrounded yourself with people who also have chronic illness? Like, what does that look like for you?
I think for me, I don't feel like I have, certainly not to like the extent that you've described, like a community of people, of patients and caregivers with the same things that Sarah has. I think that she certainly has some close friends she's made online who also deal with the same things she does, and they've kind of connected and bonded and supported each other in and through that. I think there hasn't been the like crossover to then me getting to know their caregivers or partners or anything like that. I do I have, through the magic of the internet, met other caregivers, and so I have some good friends who are caregivers, like yourself, who are some of the like best people when you're going through this kind of stuff, because they like instantly get it. They instantly understand the hardship, and there's just kind of like it cuts through some of the like superficial stuff, and you're just like understand what you're going through. But yeah, the piece you're describing of the difficulty of seeing to see people passing from, what your husband is living with, like that. Right. I can't imagine like the levels of pain and grief and all of that around that.
Well, because like the way you just phrased it, it's true that like, so then I'm always then picturing like, is this what's going to happen to him?
Mm-hmm.
Right. In this situation, it's not because it was a bone marrow,
right.
Transplant, but when they have the same disease, you can't help but think and like translate that onto the person that you're living with who has that same disease. So there's that piece. And then there's also the piece of like, this was now a person that you're friends with.
Yeah.
And so it's a sort of like double-edged sword that ends up happening. A few years ago, we had one summer where we lost our 3 closest friends who have FA and who are all around Sean's age.
Yeah.
And I was close friends with the partner of one of them. And so I ended up flying to Florida for the funeral. Sean had just had one of his many surgeries, and so he had to stay here. And so I flew there, and I remember at the funeral, another adult with FA recognizing me from, because it's a small community, recognizing me, coming up and saying, "You're Allison, right? Are you Sean's wife? I'm so-and-so. And like, I want to get to know you. Like, let's be friends." And I remember like literally saying to him, like, I cannot be friends with anyone else with this disease right now. Like, I cannot. Like, I'm literally standing at this person's funeral. Like, I can't do it.
Right.
And of course, since then we have become friends because I just can't not. Right.
Right. Yeah.
But I think it was this moment of like, no, I cannot continue to do that. And so, I mean, I think that even sometimes when I'm looking through my Facebook or my Instagram feed, you're just, it's full of like caring bridges and, like updates and things like that. And so it's this push and pull of, I want to be there for you because I do get it. And I am in it and I do want to support you. And I do, I am curious is the wrong word, but like it's good to learn more about the disease.
Right.
And so like, but sometimes it's like, like most people's feeds probably do not look like mine, They're a lot more lighthearted than mine. And so it just keeps thinking it's this double-edged sword of like the support that I get, but then also the challenges that come with that.
Yeah, I can relate to like the feed of people going through hard things. Whether that's people I follow who have similar conditions to Sarah, just to learn, and other caregivers who are dealing with that, and then just other friends who life is hard. And I think like for me, something happened around, I don't know if it was like specifically if it was Sarah getting sick, if it was us not being able to have kids in a family, like us going through like these very difficult things that kind of, at least for me, like really opened my eyes to the hard things that other people were going through around me. Like it's easier to see that, it's easier to connect with that. Like there's more empathy there.
Yeah.
And so as part of that, like wanting to be there, wanting to support the people around you going through that. And it's hard when there's so much of that. And like I don't know about you, but like I tend to like the empathy, like I really feel when someone else is going through something, like it's like I feel that as well. And so like when there's people all around you struggling, like you can't, it's hard to not feel affected by that. But also like as a caregiver myself, as Sarah with a chronic illness, like I don't have the capacity always to like to be there as a supporter or to like it's hard in that regard, because it's like you're more aware and you want to help, but you also like don't have the capacity of like a quote unquote like healthy person to show up and be there.
Right. So you don't have the capacity because, as we always talk about, our backpacks are so heavy and we're depleted. But at the same time, it's almost like thinking of the Grinch, like our hearts are like way bigger.
You're right. Or 3 sizes too large. Yeah.
Right. Not too large. Just the right size. But you know what I mean? Like you said, like that's like that there's a term though, that like that you're an empath, right?
You're right.
Like, you feel that. And I can't remember if I've told you this, but a couple months ago, we had new neighbors that moved in directly across the street. And within a week of them moving in, they had twins, preemies, And the preemies were in the hospital for a long time, and they have these 2 dogs, and they also have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old.
Oh.
And it's like, I barely know these folks, but like the empath in me was like I almost like I couldn't relax knowing that across the street from me, this really hard thing was happening to these people who are basically strangers to me. But because I have been through so many hard things, like it was like ripping my heart out to know that this was happening. And I kept trying to like, okay, well, what if I could do this? What if I do? And even still, like every day I'm like, maybe I could just go walk their dogs. And sometimes I have to be like, Allison, like your bucket's empty. You know what I mean? But I think it's that pull that like you often see, that who shows up for other caregivers? The caregivers.
Yeah.
Because we're the ones who get it. Like we're the ones who know what it feels like when nobody shows up. We're the ones who know what someone needs in that moment. So it's always like we're the ones who are the most exhausted and also want to show up. But I think that then for us, it's that push and pull of like, do I do it? Do I use this like precious little bit of energy?
Yeah.
Or do I not? When I'm like uniquely qualified to do it and yet need to like, quote, care for myself, you know?
Yeah, I think that's a tricky line to walk because, I mean, you genuinely, these are people around you that you care about, or even if it's, like you're saying, someone across the street, like you intrinsically know like things that would be helpful or things that could make a difference. And yet like you can't also do that for everybody. And so I don't know what the like answer to that is. I think for me, I'm someone, I get the sense that you're like, you have you make friends easily and you have like a pretty big network of like people and all of that. Right.
Yep.
True. Whereas I'm more of an introvert. I have much like a smaller group around me, I think.
Yep.
And so I think I end up with fewer people, who I like know that I will support and show up for. And like, I will be aware of what's happening with other people and I can like, I may send a message or something like that or commiserate or, something like that. But I think for me, my, just how I am socially kind of puts a little bit of a limiter on it.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
It absolutely makes sense. Yeah.
And along with that, like, especially right now, like being burned out, I find myself much more gentle on myself with like understanding that the things that I don't have the energy for and kind of being okay with that right now. Yeah.
I'm glad that you see that and are doing that for yourself. And I think that for me, COVID has helped or sort of forced me to do that. Like I can't be out doing as many things to support people. And I think it's funny when you say it's true that we like, connect with people easily and all of that. But I think it's true that it's not even just like my closest people that I want to go help. Like this heart of mine makes me want to help like this like person across the street that I barely know.
Right. Yeah.
A thing that happens too is so Minneapolis where we live, we're in St. Paul, but the Twin Cities where we live is the like one of the very best places in the world for people who have Fanconi anemia. So the hospital here which we didn't know when we, when Sean was first diagnosed, we're fortunate, just so fortunate that this is where we live. Yeah. But like the experts are here. So people are constantly flying in from across the world to come to Minneapolis to see the doctors. Right. And so often on like the Facebook group, a family will say, hey, everybody, like we're coming to town. Who's around? And those are the moments where sometimes I've never met these people. Right. Sometimes they're people that are acquaintances or people I do know, but that's where I have to sort of guard myself a little bit. Yeah. And decide like, okay, I'm only like 15 minutes away, but do I have that in me? You know what I mean? Yeah. There was even one day, actually it was the day we talked about in the previous episode where I was talking about how we were at the ENT and we thought it was going to be fine. Oh, and got these biopsies. And as we were sitting there waiting to go into the appointment, we got a text from a friend of ours who has FA who said, hey, I just saw you're at the clinic on Facebook. And so we're across the street. We're going to be at the clinic in a little bit. Maybe we can see you. Right. And by the time we left the appointment, Sean was just like, like bloody and all the things.
Yeah.
And it was like, I knew that if we sat in that lobby for maybe like 6 extra minutes, these friends of ours would come and we would see them and all of that. And I thought, we just can't.
Yeah.
We just can't. And I, clearly I'm still thinking about it a month later that like, we just like ships in the night with them, and that we could have been a big support to them. But I was like, we got to go home, And so I think that's those boundaries. I'm not always great at those boundaries because I see the ways that I can help. But it's also like, I have to have them for me and for, I think if it had been just me, it would have been harder to say no. But also I was in the moment, I was the caregiver looking at him, being like, he can't have a conversation. Even with these people he loves. Yeah. He can't right now. He's got to go home.
Do you feel like that's something you've gotten better at over the many years of being a caregiver, living with Sean with FA, that you've gotten better at understanding kind of where to put up those boundaries or how much you can give? Or
that's a good question. I think it's a little bit of both. I think I've gotten better at boundaries, and I think the longer I'm a caregiver, I get it more. Right.
Yeah.
So it's both of these things are happening in tandem. Whereas before I would have been like, oh, cool, or whatever. And now I'm like, man, these caregivers need support.
Yeah.
So I feel even more pulled, but I also feel like I'm getting better at boundaries. I think an interesting thing is that now that I am so fortunate that like, this is like supporting caregivers is what I get to do for like my job. Right.
Yeah.
So that also helps that it feels like I have so much more time and energy because I don't have this other 40-hour week job that I can say like, actually this is part of my work week. And I'm not saying that being around people is work. That's not what I'm trying to say, but you know what I mean?
I know what you mean.
It feels better that it's like it's like designated, like it's like, this is, I can schedule time for this person because that's also part of my job,
Yeah.
Something that, and I don't know if you have found this, but that can happen. Like when Sean was having his bone marrow transplant, there were support groups for the caregivers in like the hallway every Tuesday at 3:00 or something.
Right.
And probably told you this, but something that like made me crazy about those was that like this person would say, well, my person is on day whatever and is doing great. And then I'd be like, well, I'm jealous because Sean's not doing great. And then this person would be like, my person's doing terrible and is about to go home on hospice. And then I'd be like, well, I don't want to hear that. That's terrifying. And so there's this also sort of this like comparison thing, I think, that can happen.
Yeah.
That in some ways you want to be like, yes, you're my people. You're the ones who get it. But also like, then you compare like, oh, he's not doing that well. I hope he's not going to do that poorly. You know what I mean? Is there anything like with that in your world that translates to, or not so much?
No, that resonates. Certainly like seeing people that I follow in social media who have like ME, for example, and seeing, there are people who are not well at all and seeing like, feeling that, connection to when Sarah was doing really bad and like, I've been there and also I don't want to go back there.
Yeah.
And then also seeing people who, are out and about more and like, well, I wish that could be us and that we were, she had more energy. And it is hard to like, to see the range and like, and it's human nature to compare and kind of like, where do we line up in that like continuum?
Right.
I think at the same time, I think there is, and I think it's maybe different because of the types of things that Sarah has versus like what Sean has, is there is an element of seeing people who are doing better that like there is future, or there is like, it's something where it doesn't always have to have, we're not always going to be stuck where we are right now necessarily. That there is a possibility for things to improve.
Yeah. I would wonder if you guys are that for people.
Yeah.
I mean, because you have been, she is light years from where she was.
Yeah, for sure.
Even when we started this podcast, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so I would wonder if in some ways people look at your story or hear your story here and are like, oh, wow. Like, and every story is so different, but I mean, it is a hopeful story. It's not just this downward trajectory. Like you have had this upswing.
Right.
And I wonder if that gives other people hope.
Yeah. And I don't know, like that would be great. But also like, it's, as we've talked about before, hope can be a hard thing where it's like,
Yeah.
And I don't think I'm not going out there trying to give people false hope, but like,
Right.
I don't, there's also like, even with us or with me kind of seeing other people doing better, it's like, that's not the kind of thing that I can like really latch onto, like hoping for that day when that is us. It's a little, it has to be a little bit more abstracted that like, that's a possible future for us because it feels too close to being let down to, like hold that as like, that's where we're going to be.
Right.
If that makes sense.
It does. And can I just pause to acknowledge, like, you know, this is hard stuff that you and I are carrying. And that, like, when you just said that, like, there's hope, but there's also, I don't want to get too hopeful. And you know what I mean? I just want to like acknowledge what you just said, and that, you know, that it's hard. Yeah. It's hard. And so even seeing hopeful things can, like, we can't let ourselves get our hope up. And so I hear you and I feel that. In our situation, because Sean is, what is he now? He just had a birthday too, 43. So he's like an old man with this disease.
Right.
And a number of years ago, there's this camp in Maine that happens every summer, and it's for families. And so we went a number of years ago, and it was like you could see the families with the kids who were like, look at that guy. And they were trying to get their kids, like they wanted like Sean to be like the big brother to their kids and to be like partnered with him and whatever. And they were like, look, this is Sean, and this is his wife. He has a wife, and this is his daughter. He has a daughter, you know, and like, you could just see the hope that he at his age was giving to these families. And I won't speak for him. He's so amazing that he'd probably be like, I'm so glad, because he just is amazing in all the ways. I will say that felt hard. Yeah. That there were parts of it that I was like, wow, I mean, it's cool that he can have that role and that he can whatever. But like, let's think about what that is actually saying. That it's like saying like, he's so rare that he has made it to this age that we're going to like idolize the fact that he is 40. At that point, he was like, I don't know, 36 or something like. And so that's kind of sick and backward, you know what I mean? It's like kind of messed up in some ways when you stop to think about it, like why it is that they're idolizing him, you know?
Do you find it's hard because, I mean, FA is a pretty small community, right?
It is.
Like that feels like, whereas, you know, ME and some of the other things that Sarah has, like, while they may not be like recognized broadly, they're pretty extensive. They're not rare. So like, do you feel like that? I mean, that feels like that would be magnifying this whole experience to some extent, right? Yeah.
I mean, we all know each other.
Yeah.
Right. So even when we're at the doctor, and of course they try to HIPAA, right? Everything. Yeah. But they're like, oh, well, someone was just here from California for a biopsy. We're like, yeah, we know them. Yeah. We just talked to them. Oh yeah. We just, you know, like it's a small community. And so, yeah, I think that does magnify it, that everybody knows everybody, but then also you feel it when you lose somebody because it is such a small community. And so even, you know, when they get a newsletter, I think it's quarterly, and there's a list of the people who have passed away every time. And it's typically like 8 or 9 people. You know, and I always look at the their birth year. Do you know what I mean? And most of them, of course, are younger than Sean. Yeah. You know? So yeah, I think it makes it easier and harder and all that stuff. And I think sometimes there can be some pressure to be like, we're the spokespeople, we're the whatever, like he's the this, I'm the that, you know, and some days I got that in me and some days I don't. Yeah. You know?
And that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Even this was, you know, what is time? I don't know. A couple years ago. There was a while.
I've kind of stopped lately.
It did.
Yeah.
It did. It's very strange. It was pre-COVID. So whatever year that might have been, a while ago. There was a woman that we met. I think maybe she was following me on Facebook, following the negative space. And I had said, you know, here we are at the hospital, because I don't even remember why. Sean was in the hospital or something. And she messaged me and said, I'm a follower of the negative space. And I too am in that hospital right now. And I was like, wait, what? What floor are you on? She said, I'm on the 7th floor. I was like, we're on the 7th floor. And so she was like inpatient, and she had, I think, lung cancer. And so, you know, we were chatting back and forth, and then she's like, can I meet you place? And I was like, sure.
Right.
And so then we like I went down to her room and then there she was. And then, all the stuff. And so we became like instant friends.
Yeah.
And, then you follow along and all the things and you're friends. And then, and then she passed away, and so it's like, so it's not even this, like, it's not always like the FA thing.
Right.
It's just that because we've met other people through just the transplant process who had other diseases and all of that. And it's just being in this medical community or this chronic illness or serious illness community that then sort of sets you up for that.
Yeah.
And, like you said before, like in some ways, those are your people. Like those are the people, like I could walk into her hospital room and she doesn't have to worry about like, oh, are you there? Like I get it. Like I was just in another hospital room. But then that loss of, like it's just a lot.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah. Kind of, I mean, one thing this kind of reminds me of, and it's a little bit people going through slightly different experiences, but I see, a lot of the like caregivers I follow, just because there seems to be more of them, are maybe people like taking care of their parents. Someone our age taking care of their parents.
Yeah.
And seeing them, like their parent passes and then they're kind of in that, like, now I'm no longer a caregiver kind of like spot.
Yeah.
And like then like, jump. What is life? What would, if that was me in that spot, like what is post caregiving? And that's not due to Sarah's conditions not being like terminal type conditions. Like that's not a reality that I like jumps to the forefront as often.
Right.
But that's certainly hard
100%.
to, and that sounds like, in what you're going through with all of the communities that you're in, you're facing that a lot more, I think.
For sure. Yeah.
And I just want to recognize that's a hard thing to continually have to be reminded and face.
It is.
And I'm really sorry that's
Thank you.
Has to be part of your experience.
Right. Because of course I'm seeing then for every person who passes, I'm seeing the person left behind.
Yeah.
And sort of watching them and thinking about them and thinking about like, what do they need now? And how, what is their life now? And you know what I mean? And I think you're so right that for so many people, the caregiving ends up being such a huge part of their life that afterwards, then they're also like, wait, what now?
Yeah.
Like, who am I? And what is this? And all of that. And I think, I've heard of some caregivers who have said, like, in some ways, like, this sounds terrible, but in some ways it was like a relief because that was so much work.
Yeah.
But also like, I would go back to doing that work because that would mean my person's back.
Yeah.
So I think you're right that we see that then, and like it's not just like the outsider or the person who's like a friend with them, but like I see it from the caregiver's perspective as well, of like this wife that I have gotten to be friends with who just lost her husband, and I'm thinking like, what is, how is she getting out of bed today? Maybe she isn't. I don't know, and that's okay. But I think an interesting thing now too is, she and I had partnered together because we had this really similar thing. And I, wonder if now it's sort of like, and I wouldn't blame her if this was the case, if she was like, I can't look at you because you are continuing to live like you were supposed to be future me.
Right.
And I would 100% understand if that's how she felt, that it's like, we got through the bone marrow like situation, and in her family she didn't, and so it might be hard to be like, oh, I don't want to look at you guys,
Yeah.
So that's the hard thing too about when you have those friendships like that, right? Yeah.
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 It's heavy.
It is heavy. Yeah. It's heavy stuff. And I think that sometimes when I'm scrolling through my feed, because I'm like, oh, I need to follow some like puppy hashtags or, like,
right. And you should. And that's okay. Yeah.
I should. Somehow Instagram has figured out that apparently I like videos of like cute babies smiling and laughing. So then a bunch of those show up. And so it's kind of a nice, break every once in a while. But yeah. Yeah. I wonder, those like wordles. Do you know what a wordle is?
Oh, that sounds familiar, but I can't place it.
It's like a word cloud. Like if you take like all the words that we have spoken and then you show them, and like the biggest words are the ones that we've said the most, you know?
Okay. Yeah.
I feel like hard would be
yeah, right.
word in our word cloud, in our Wordle for this episode, but just in general.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm glad that this is a place where we can talk about those hard things. And yeah. I'm just feeling like I'm a little exhausted from this hard conversation, which is good. But
it was a lot.
It was a lot. You know, typically, let me think for a second. Typically, we like to talk about our supporters, right?
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to see if that translates here. If there is a supporter of a caregiver, how could they help in this moment? I guess the thing would be that if you know, to know that, I don't know, I would guess that maybe somebody like my mom or someone who's close to me might wonder, like, why do you continue to be friends with all these people who are so sick, right? Just because they care about me and they see that the impact it has on me when I, feel that loss. And so I think, for supporters to know that the reason that we do that is also because it's this community piece, right? Like that those are our people.
That's what I was going to say. We found our people, and sometimes it's a hard, not because of the people, but it can be a hard community to be a part of because of the external conditions around it, I guess.
Right.
But like, those are the people that get it. Those are the people that like understand and like see everything you're facing. And that can just really make a big difference as a caregiver to know that you have people who have been where you're at. Yeah.
Yeah. I've started to do this caregiver coaching stuff and I still don't feel like coaching is the right word, but essentially that's what it is. That it's like, I have time and space for people, and that's what they keep saying. I just want someone who gets it.
Yeah.
Right. And so even I have a friend of mine who is a therapist who said, I just want to say that I'm a little nervous for you, because essentially what she was saying was like, bringing on these coaching clients like could mean that this is just more people who are having hard things, and it could be more loss for me and more triggering things for me. And so again, I had to sort of struggle with what we talked about earlier about like the empath in me and wanting to support, and also like the boundaries piece. And so, so I think that, I mean, at this point, I feel like it's something that, again, because it's also like something I'm doing more formally and part of my job and all of that. But I see the risk of that.
For sure.
That this could, that this is opening my heart and my life to more people who are going through hard things. And so at this point, I just see the benefit of being able to be there for them as a person who gets it.
Yep.
And I'm going to have to be careful to make sure I care for myself, as well. So, yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. If anybody listening is interested in, learning more about the caregiver coaching thing, you can reach out to me. Also, we had our giveaway. Thank you for all of you who entered in the giveaway. We sent out an email to the winner. So if you didn't get an email, I'm sorry that you were not chosen, but I'm sure it will not be our final giveaway.
No, we'll be back next year for it.
Yes. And also, this is a time of year when you can, if people are saying, what would you like for Christmas? You could say, I want one of these caregiver boxes, and you can have, request that for Christmas. Or if you're a supporter and you're listening and want to get a box for someone for the holidays, you can find that through at the negative space .life. And if you want to get a box for someone or for yourself and the cost is prohibitive, there's a spot on there where you could just click, fill out a form, and I will just send you a box at no cost. So, and if you're feeling really generous holiday spirit, I'm always looking for people to sponsor boxes as well. So I can continue to do that. So there's a space on the website where you can do that as well. So just wanted to get that in there. But
very cool.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, my friend.
Yeah.
Well, I am really glad that you are in my community.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm happy that you're here as well.
Yeah. And all of you listeners as well. Like, this is why we're all in it together, right? So that we can be with each other. We get it. And even though sometimes it can feel really hard, we're able to be here for each other and get it in ways that other people don't. So, yeah.
Good.
Okay. Well, you enjoy that snow.
All right. I will.
And
maybe me and Mosi will go make a snowman. We'll see.
Oh my gosh. How cute would that be? Too cute. Yeah.
So.
All right. Thank you, friend. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Sounds good.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. You've been listening to In Sickness. Find us online at insickness.care or on Instagram at insicknesspodcast. You can send your questions and comments to insicknesspodcast@gmail.com. If you enjoyed the show, please share it with a friend or fellow caregiver, or leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Thanks for listening, and take care.